Hey everybody, Janet McLean here with Coach House Realty. Hope you are doing well. Want to talk to you for just a few minutes about an important topic, hopefully something that you will never need, but you may know someone or someone in your family may end up needing this information. So I want you to just have it and know that there are good resources. And that is if you or someone you know is facing foreclosure. And the reason I'm saying that now is because there are all these warnings and things. I just want you to be prepared. It's not something to scare you, but rather to educate you about the options that are available should this happen to you. And full disclosure, I actually went through this myself years ago when I lived in Atlanta. I'd lost my job. I spent, I don't even know how many months. I'd have to go back and think. Couldn't find another job, went through my savings, and then ultimately couldn't pay my mortgage. And I ended up 3 months behind, and I got a knock on the door. I'm not saying this to scare you because there is hope. And the sheriff just or sheriff's deputy, I guess, shoved a piece of paper in my hand, and it was a notice that my house was going to be auctioned off, literally auctioned off at the courthouse steps, and that was about 6 weeks or so from that date. Of course, I was terrified, didn't know what I was going to do. And I tell you that just because I want you to understand that if you're in that situation, I completely understand the feelings. When somebody says, I know how you feel, I really do know how you feel going through that process. You're embarrassed, you're ashamed of yourself, you're mad at yourself because you've not planned properly, all those things. So, this is something that's going to be important to help you know what your options are, what choices you have if this is something that is applicable to you. And it's not the be all end all. I will tell you that you can climb out of it. But the one thing I want you to know is there are choices that you have before any foreclosure occurs. If you're behind, for example, if you're behind on your mortgage, you're probably getting notices and calls and letters and Lord knows what, emails from your bank and asking you to get in touch with them. The worst thing to do, because this is something that I did for a while, is to ignore those because those are going to be the things that are going to help you. Now, I'll walk you through a couple of different scenarios as to things that you can do. It may be something that you hadn't thought about or something that you've tried, but we'll walk through some of those. And the first one is that you do get in touch with the bank. I know a lot of people think if you just ignore them, then they'll forget about you and you'll fly under the radar. And that is not true because they have all this information. But believe me, they do not want your house. They do not want any more real estate. They would rather figure out a way for you to work it out to pay the money that you're owing rather than having to take the real estate, figure out how to um, get it listed and sold, put it back in their inventory. They don't want any of that. So if you talk to them and tell them that I'm trying to find a way to make the payments, if it's a job loss, if it's an injury or whatever, that you're trying to find a way and you want to work with them, and what ideas do they have? Because every bank will negotiate differently, typically, depending on what their reserves are. So if that doesn't work, they can't give you any options or whatever. Sometimes they'll say, okay, we can hold off payments and you can do interest only. Sometimes it will be, we can modify the loan, which means that we'll hold the payments and the interest, and then we will wrap those around and put them at the end of the loan. So in other words, you skip 3 payments up front, but then you put those on the end of the loan, so it goes 3 months longer. But then there's a little more interest tacked onto it. But that's a great option if they'll do it. There are to sell the house. There's something that a lot of people think, well, I can't sell it because now I'm in this situation. No. If you can sell it, if you have good equity in it, then my suggestion would be, if you don't know of another way, to sell it and take the money and run. Because with that equity that you've built up, that's your money. Once the bank steps in, it is likely you will not see any of that. So if you have a good bit of equity built up, then you can put the house on the market. You can sell it for cash. We have a cash offer thing. There are several of those all over the place, but take that and then you can buy something smaller. You can rent something. You can move in with mom and dad in the garage, anything. But it will not only give you some money to live on while you're, getting yourself back straightened out and straightened up, but it will also then help save your credit because your credit's going to be important. It's not a forever sentence that you're going to have this situation. And at some point, you're going to want to buy a car, buy another house. And so if you can preserve your credit, that is always a good thing, of course. There's a deed in lieu. If you don't have a lot of equity, you can give the house back to the bank if they're willing to do that. You just kind of turn over the keys, essentially. But there are those options before you get into a really bad situation or worse situation and get stuck. But you want to get as much money out of the house if as you can. The best option, of course, would be to be able to stay there and be able to work it out with the bank. The second best is to take the money that you have in equity and get that and use it wisely for something else. And then the third is going to be, well, you just give it back to them if they'll take that. Some banks don't do that, but a lot of them will. And then, of course, the worst case scenario is foreclosure. But I can tell you, even with foreclosure, again, it is not a life sentence. But there are those options, and typically, if you work with the bank, then they're much more open and willing to work with you about what your situation is. I worked with a lady years ago who was she had a really high paying 6-figure job, doing quite well for many years. And like me, she'd been in her house for a number of years, had a lot of equity built up, but she was not in a position at that point to be able to get herself out of it. And the bank was coming after her. She had to move her family out and all that. The bank worked with her, but she was diligent about staying in touch with them, letting them know what was going on, and they ultimately worked it out so that she could get squared up again. So that's the main thing. I mean, if you're in running a business, someone owes you money, they ignore you, then of course it's going to be a little more frustrating and you're not going to be as willing. So I tell you those things just so you know that you have some choices. If you are in a position to sell the house yourself, that's fine, but just know you need to sell it quickly. I would suggest that you set a timeline and get after it if that's the case. You're more than welcome to call me to talk to me if you have more questions about it. We can talk about more details and other things that are involved with it, but I can help you any way I can just because I've been through it. My situation ended that I called my parents and finally told my parents. They knew I was out of a job, but they had no idea that was in such a financial straits. So my dad, God bless my dad, he wrote a check to get me caught up, and then at the same time, the good Lord saw fit to give me a job, and all those things came together at the same time. Worked with the bank; they gave me a modified loan, and then I worked it out so that I could, pay them and then get out of debt. So every case is different. Everybody's situation is unique, and I'm happy to help you any way I can. Talk to you through any scenario that you have, and hopefully this will be helpful to you. So I hope you found this video to be helpful. I hope you have a great day, and I hope to hear from you soon. Call me, text me. The information is there below, and we'll see what we can do to help. Thanks so much.